Expanding beyond DE&I, the role of language and business communication in fostering inclusion and belonging in global organizations. Ms. Sonia Almeida
Sí.
Soares is Director of Inclusion and Diversity I&D, Employer Branding and HR Communications at Volvo Group in India. She has over 17 years of rich and extensive experience and having worked across various HR roles and verticals and on global projects in a diverse set of esteemed MNCs such as Honeywell Technology Solutions, Praxair Inc., and now with Volvo Group. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we all put our hands together for Miss Sonia?
For the lovely introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here amongst all of you to talk on this very interesting topic of the significance of... have I pressed something unknowingly? Okay. Interesting topic on the significance of language and business communication in fostering inclusion and belonging in organizations. Let me start by putting up few statements up here, and I would love to hear your thoughts on these statements. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What's your impression about this greeting? Anyone? Sorry? Yeah, okay, not inclusive. Good guess. Why is it not inclusive? Yeah, very right, Royden. So over here, it assumes that there are only two genders. So the non-binary gender gets alienated. Would your wife accompany you in this trip? Little louder. Sorry? Yes. First of all, we are assuming that the person is married. Secondly, we would alienate people who are in live-in relationships or even the people from the LGBTQ plus community. So I missed to inform, okay, how can you replace? So the first one, ladies and gentlemen, you could simply say by good morning, colleagues, good morning, distinguished guests. So it depends on the crowd. And instead of wife, a better way of addressing is partner. Suman is appointed as the new chairman of this committee. Is it okay? Yes. The chairman is what we call the universal male. What it does is it assumes or it makes male as a default gender. And when you say chairperson, it describes the same job, but without signaling out a particular gender. The autistic people are put in the same team as the normal people. Very nice. What's normal? So normal people is not the opposite of people with disabilities. Persons without disabilities, that would be a better word rather than normal people. Persons with disabilities are also normal people. So that means persons without disabilities are not any more normal than others. Anything else in this particular statement? Autistic people. That's what we call the identity-first language. So a better way of addressing is replacing the identity-first language with people-first language. So instead of saying autistic people, you could say people with autism. So autistic people, which is the identity-first language, what we do is we put the descriptor ahead of the person. So any chronic conditions, illnesses, diagnoses, the person's heritage or disabilities are emphasized more. Whereas in identity-first language, how we would address over here is people with autism, you emphasize the person first. The person is put ahead of their characteristics or any other descriptors. So similarly, diabetic people, you would say people with diabetics, or wheelchair-bound person would be people using wheelchair. Similarly, over here, our company is doing CSR work for the disabled people. It would be people with disabilities. Guys, just let's get to work. Very commonly used phrase, right? So guys is not a gender neutral way of addressing people. A better way would be just saying friends or colleagues, again, depending on the crowd. Are you done with the manpower planning? Anybody? Sorry? Yes, men. Again, the universal male. So a better word would be, are you done with the workforce planning? So these are just few examples of inclusive language, but what is inclusive language? I have here the definition from the Linguistic Society of America, which defines inclusive language as that which acknowledges diversity, conveys respect to all people, is sensitive to differences, and promotes equal opportunities. Now, the central tenet of inclusive language is for people to think about the impact that their words and phrases have on others. So this inclusive language, it avoids any terms, phrases, or expressions that can either be sexist, racist, or biased towards any particular group of people. So that means your inclusive language, it recognizes that words matter. The choice of words, which is either intentional or unintentional, can either include or exclude others. So the ultimate goal of inclusive language is to create an environment where everyone is empowered to speak and confident that their voice will be heard. Because when you use inclusive language, you're respectful of others and you bring everyone into the conversation. Benefits of inclusive language at the workplace, several. First, the no-brainer. It contributes to a sense of belonging because people from diverse backgrounds, they are welcomed, they feel valued, and they feel that they can bring their authentic selves to work. And it does reinforce DE&I to be a critical component of your culture. It sets the base for implementation of other inclusive practices. And when people start thinking about the impact of their words and behavior on others, it creates this human-centric workplace where people are first at the center of everything. Most of y'all would have heard about this. Just last month, in August, the Supreme Court of India released this interesting handbook on combating gender stereotypes. And I must say that this is a commendable stride by the Supreme Court for introducing such a handbook to support their lawyers and the legal community in understanding, comprehending, and challenging the deeply rooted preconceptions around gender roles. And the beauty of this handbook is it is not only limited to men and women genders. The terminology also extends to the LGBTQ plus community as well. So how does this handbook help? Firstly, we being human beings, we have these stereotypes consciously within us, and that's due to our thinking. And the thinking is based on our diverse upbringings and different backgrounds that we come from. And that leads to some kind of conditioning within us. Now, what does this lead to? It leads us to that person, to not see that person as a unique individual with their own characteristics. So then we start making assumptions which are not correct about this individual, and it clouds our judgment. Now, in this ecosystem of the Supreme Court, the legal community, what impact can it have? The impact will be on their decision making, which leads to exclusion, it leads to discrimination. So then, how do we overcome the stereotypes? Firstly, we all should acknowledge that we have biases and then make conscious efforts of overcoming these biases. And one beautiful way of doing it is by using the right language around it. I've just put a extract from the handbook out over here. And if you see the first one, career woman, it's replaced by woman. Have you heard about career men? Anybody out here? No, right? So why should we have career woman? The next one, dutiful wife, faithful wife, good wife, obedient wife. I don't know what it all means. It's wife, period. Slut, replaced by woman. Unwed mother. A mother is mother at the end of the day. Woman of loose morals, easy virtues, so on and so forth, is just replaced by woman. I would urge all of y'all, if y'all have not gone through this handbook, please go through it. It's pretty interesting. The next topic that I would like to touch upon is microaggressions. Now, by definition, microaggression is an everyday, subtle, intentional or unintentional interactions or behaviors that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards culturally marginalized groups. Few examples, statements like, you're not a typical gay guy. You don't look like a Keralite. Assuming young people are good at and older people are bad at technology. You speak good English for an Indian. The last one, by the way, was said to me by one of my French colleagues several years back. So one can argue that these are pretty harmless statements, right? But the fact is that it can be pretty harmful to the people who experience it, especially those who experience it on a regular basis. The impact, loss of self-esteem, it leads to non-inclusive culture, and then you know what happens when you don't have inclusive culture. It impacts the performance, it impacts employee retention, so on and so forth. So then, can we tackle microaggressions? Can we address them? Yes, certainly. So firstly, how does microaggressions take place? Microaggressions happens when our brain is stuck on seeing others' differences. And we can learn to retrain our brain to avoid these kind of microaggressions. Firstly, we need to check our assumptions. We need to be empathetic, and we don't have to be defensive when someone calls us out. So firstly, educating ourselves, educating the organization, that's the basic step. And another method is the micro-interruption. Here, it is about having the opportunity to pause any biased or discriminatory behavior or a statement by another person or us ourselves, and then reflect on it. So basically, you call attention to the microaggression, address it, and quickly move on. Open dialogues, for sure, that helps. And lastly, being empathetic, putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. What is a reality for us may not be a reality for others. What the other person is going through is true for them. So it is how far do we go and we believe that particular individual. I see that time is running, but I'll quickly touch upon the job descriptions. All of us have these job postings, right? Internal and external. So I'm not sure how many organizations here use the tool Job Decoder. So this job decoder tool, if you Google, you find it online, and it's free of cost. How it works is you take the, just few more minutes, okay? You take the content from the job description, you put it in the tool, and you submit, and it will analyze your job description content. It will tell whether your job, whether it is masculine coded or neutral coded or feminine coded. Research says that if your job is masculine coded, that means it has more of these masculine words like aggressive, challenging, fearless, etc., you will have lesser women applying to the jobs. So that means you have to replace these jobs with more feminine words. Another fact is that when you have a job, if women find that they are, they will apply for the job if they think they are 100% fit for the requirements. So that means they screen themselves out and they submit fewer applications. Whereas men, if they find themselves only 60% fit for the requirements, they'll anyways apply. So if you want more women to apply for your jobs, please be inclusive in the language in your job descriptions. And be aware of also the unconscious biases. Young and energetic. Yes, we can argue that people in 40s and 50s are also young. Yes, I believe that. But then it can repel people who are, say, in their 30s and above. And it also flows into the interviews as well, being inclusive. A good method of being inclusive in the interviews is doing the standardized interviews. So what you do is you have a standard list of questions for all the candidates for a particular position. And do not ask any inappropriate questions. How does it matter whether, how the person lost their arm, or why the gap in the career? It's no longer relevant. And yes, avoiding any personal questions as well. I would like to leave with a quote. Language is very powerful. Language does not just describe reality. Language creates the reality it describes. Sonika was mentioning this afternoon about the Barney and the Pester, right, world. So yes, the world is evolving. Similarly, the standards, the best practices, and inclusive language, they are not carved on stone. They are ever evolving and changing. So that means we may not be 100% accurate or perfect. We will make mistakes. It's okay. We learn from the mistakes and improve it for the next time. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sonia Almeida Soares, for this wonderful topic. I would like to invite Ms. Sonika Aaron, CEO, Marching Sheep, to do the honors of felicitating Sonika.